Hello, welcome to the channel, of course, on the keyboard side at least, because finally I've been able to fulfill the community poll wishes of showcasing what was my collection and what is my current collection. Now, I've come a long way from this hobby because, I'll be honest, we all started someplace, right? Whether it be from a Razer keyboard or the $20 mechanical keyboard that you bought off of Amazon, which wasn't actually mechanical, to getting some full-blown customs, I'd say that I have quite a collection, or rather had, because to be quite honest, I think my collection has thinned down over the years, and it also, well, some of them just stopped working, to be quite honest with you. But what it is basically a collection of misfits and my own personal, interests in terms of keyboards. But, of course, the first ever keyboard that I had, I actually can't show off, because as it stands, it's with a classmate that I haven't seen in 5 years. So it was like a RAPOO V500 or something. It had like some yellow switches in there, but I'm pretty sure they were like Generation 1 Kales or something. But unfortunately, I can't show it off, unfortunately. But I do remember it had co-star stabs. It also was extremely heavy to press, and the keycaps were also horrendous. But anyway, cool. When it comes to the actual keyboards that are still in my possession, there's also quite a bit that I can't show off because I have sold, but without any further ado, let's start off with the Velocifire VM01. The Velocifire VM01, back in the day, I bought, or rather had my dad buy, because it was a cheap mechanical keyboard and I really wanted to get my foot into the hobby, and thanks to Tay Keyboards and his review of it, I actually bought it. I quite liked the sound signature of it. It had browns, Zorro browns actually. I'm pretty sure that they're discontinued now. But they were interesting to say the least, and with a couple changes in keycaps, it sounded pretty good. Nowadays, since I have documented the change of that keyboard on my channel, Project J, I changed all the key switches into Box Jades, and outside of the channel I also put on some random PBT keycaps that I found, and currently it resides in my mom's office through that door over there. Here's how it sounds like. Unfortunately, since I can't drag this condenser mic over there, you'll just have to rely on iPhone audio, but to be fair, if you like clickies, that's the way to go. After that, I'm pretty sure came I think it was called the Drevo Calibur V1. Back in the day, it was advertised as the $50 kind of do-it-all keyboard. It was 75%, but it was more like a TKL moved into the sort of chop off the top layer. So I think it was kind of like a Vortex vibe in a way, except without the number pad. It sounded pretty bad because of the Drevo blacks and because of the fact that the stabilizers back then, and still are to this day, pretty bad. But hey, here's a sound test. I sold that off for about like $40, and to be honest, I kind of wish I kept it. But anyway, I'm pretty sure after that came the Magic Force 68 with Gateron Reds, and the Magic Force Crystal with, well, of course, Gateron Reds. And that were my main drivers for a very long time, until I finally bought something different. By different, I mean just modified. I bought a Reddragon K552 with Gateron Reds in it, and currently I think it's the most controversial keyboard on my entire channel because of how badly it sounded because of the PBT keycaps and the O-rings I put in them. Here's how it sounds like. So finally, after all that, I decided to finally go back to my roots of being a clicky enthusiast, and I bought a KBD75v1, and I think that was gray, and it came with pale blues, or box pale blues. And I honestly fell in love with the sound. Here's what it sounds like. I gave it away to my friend though. However, I did give him a little makeover because they couldn't have a clicky keyboard, so I rebuilt it with tactiles, as you can hear over here. But after this, obviously, I didn't really stop with my trend of KBD75v1s. I think I had at least like 3 or 4 in my collection. I had some with Halo clears. I had some with box white. I even had one with Gateron Silent Reds. And then I finally bought an XD84. Before going back to the KBD75v1s, but I bought a red one. The red one is what catapulted sort of my presence in the atmosphere, because at the time I had combined it with a tactile that was, I think we called it Holy Alias. I think Walker's Keyboard Science did it first, but my keyboard specifically showed up on XQC's stream because of the Coca-Cola keycaps on it, and because of the fact, well, XQC liked Coca-Cola. And those keycaps still live on the channel today, on the DOV2. As you can see here, they are still all intact. And these are the same keycaps that I bought for 107 bucks all the way back in 2018. Now, do I regret this? No, because these, I love these still. I love these quite a lot. Unfortunately, it's been starting to shine up a little bit, but I've yet to find a replaceable set, so until then, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, when it comes to the actual progression of keyboards, I think this leads into my very first regrettable decision. The regrettable decision is a keyboard called the Red Scarf 3. It was a 75% keyboard, fully acrylic. I loved how it looked. Unfortunately, it caused the most issues. Since I was super stubborn and refused to solder anything, I actually butchered the PCB because I kept trying to apply like a heating iron to it, and like just trying to make sure the Mil-Max sockets kind of just went in place because of the tutorial that I saw on YouTube. But all in all, I should have just, I should have actually just solder them in, but I was being a pansy and I didn't know how to solder, so that cost me big time. It's currently sitting on my bookshelf, rotting away, but here's what it sounded like. After that though, I started to branch out into more customs, and I think at this time I was still using the KBD75, but I also was using the XD84 because I rebuilt it with Creamy-Oz switches, which was the Alias switch with cream stems in them, and it sounded pretty good actually. After that though, I took out the switches and I put Gateron yellows in it, which made it sound much, deeper, and as Teja likes to call it, creamy. But, well, that's also gone. Now, my memory is a bit fuzzy from between then and now, but I'm pretty sure by then I met further, and I also wanted to get my hands onto some other customs. So when I was buying custom after custom, I was like, I'm starting to get a little bit tired of everything that I have. So I decided to go into pre-builds again, and I decided to rebuild rather, with different switches. So that leads me to the Vermilla Mia Pro, which had original silent tactiles from Gazoo until I bought U4s from him and replaced it instead. Which I actually have right here. It is currently disassembled, but I'm kind of losing motivation to rebuild it, even though that is a glorious looking keyboard. I love how it looks, I love how it feels, but I don't use 65%, and the only thing that I actually did buy was a socket 68, which still hasn't come in the mail by the way, which has the same layout, but I plan to put crystal purples in it from Everglide. But the U4s in here are great, but unfortunately, since they've been revised to have the boba variants, that's in my RK84 instead, so this keyboard was just antiquated and I no longer use it, so I'm not sure really what to do with it. Maybe I'll give it to a family member, but until then, I'm just going to let it sit on my trash can for a little bit, and maybe I'll discard the switches someday. But now came the phase of me just buying budget keyboards and rebuilding them, and I had quite a few. I'm pretty sure I bought a couple of Reddragon K552s. I also rebuilt the K552 and gave it to a friend. The old black one, Gateron rented it. and I think he still has it to this day, which I'm happy about. I also managed to snag a Drevo Calibur, which that same friend also still has, with box pinks. And then I built the other one with box whites, so most likely that one's also pretty good. And up until now, I think everything that I've done was just budget stuff. But back to the customs I went, and I bought my second regrettable purchase, the Polaris 75. The Polaris 75 was a 75% keyboard that was supposed to mimic a Satisfaction 75, I do believe, but in a weird way. I put the original Hollywood switches in them from the Coca-Cola keyboard that I sold because I didn't want it anymore. What a big mistake, I suppose. And the switches are still sitting in my drawer right now because I actually took them out of this keyboard. But here's what it sounded like when I originally had built it. I did replace all the switches with Everglide Jade Greens to make it sound more bearable, but it still sounds like a hollow sack of shit, and it's just sitting inside my drawer for now because I really don't like it. There was also one keyboard that managed to put me onto Homogeneo's channel, which was the S80, but before that I also had the Royal Kludge Sync 87G that I built because it was a hentai keyboard. Yes, it was a keyboard with basically contraband PBT die-sub keycaps with a bunch of licensed hentai on it and copyright issues, so that's why the keycap never saw the light of day. But I showed it off on Homogeneo's channel and it managed to get a reaction out of him. But here's what it sounds like. The S80 came after the Polaris 75, and that had its fair share of problems as well. I broke it, and then suddenly the PCB got fucked. But nowadays it's residing with my Creamy switches, and it sounds pretty good with the acrylic bottom. Here's what it sounds like. And to the current day, the only two other keyboards that I currently have is, of course, the Amber keyboard, or the DOV2R2, with the Gateron 8008 inks, and of course, the most recent build, the AR87 with PBT Lord. And yet again, I must show this off on the camera. It looks glorious. Look how beautiful that is. The font is also a little bit of a deviation from standard font as well. I do like it quite a lot. So where does this put me today? Well, I still have a fuck ton of keyboards that I have yet to do anything with, and I have one board that's coming in that I'm going to be building on stream, whenever that will be, which is, of course, the Saka 68 from CMM Studios, designed by Feather. That is a 65% keyboard, but I think it'll be nice to have a sort of portable keyboard and just a collection piece, because to be fair, I do like the look of 65%, but I just, I really don't have a use for them, especially when I have such utility required on the function row keys. So yeah, that's my collection for the better part. I'm pretty sure I missed some, but if I have, I suppose you can just look on a playlist that you can see right here, because my entire keyboard documentation is on YouTube. I appreciate everyone for coming around, and I really do appreciate the fact that people have stuck around for this long, voting on polls, watching the videos, watching my guides, coming around and leaving a comment. It all means a lot to me. Of course, standard YouTube lingo aside, I really do, appreciate the presents that you've given me. And to be fair, I've gotten some mail from a lot of folks saying that they like my content and such, and it is nice when I'm having a bad day and I see that stuff. I don't see it very often, but to the times in which that it's perfectly timed, I do appreciate it. So, until then, hopefully that I can release something else related to keyboard content, because I am drying up a little bit, but I need to think of you. And until then, have a good one.